All right. We are trying to rethink what school is all about. We want to use cutting edge methods with traditional way of looking at the world and each other. So let's introduce ourselves. You're going to say your name, your grade, and the fun fact about yourself. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go? All right. Caitlin's new, so we're going to start with her.
Okay. My name is Caitlin Ford. I am a junior, and if I could travel anywhere in the world, I would probably go to Germany because I'm learning German right now.
There you go.
And then an interesting fact about myself.
No, that was it. That was
Okay.
interesting. All right.
Alright. I am Lily Miller. I am a sophomore. And if I could go anywhere in the world, it would be Italy, just because it seems like they have so many cool things to do.
Hello, can you hear this?
Get closer.
Hello, I am Max, and I'm in, I think, 8th grade, I'm not sure anymore. But if I could go anywhere in the world, it would be Hawaii, because they have a lot of golf carts, and that's it.
Golf
And
carts.
chickens. They have a lot of chickens.
Yeah, I've actually been
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay. I'm Jude. I'm also a sophomore, and that didn't help. If I could go anywhere in the world, I think also Hawaii.
Hawaii.
A fun fact about Hawaii is they have a lot of chickens, so sometimes people play chicken dodgeball. I had some friends who went and did that.
Excellent. They also have a lot of mongooses.
Really?
Yes.
Yes, which
There's-
is the mascot of the Trinity School. That's right.
Am
And
I
they
allowed
tend to eat those chicken eggs. That's what I've heard.
Am I allowed
Oh, we have a
to?
book.
Oh yes, and our man in the chair with the sad and terrible camera looking at him,
Yes,
making him look somewhat blue.
I am Charlie Zedwick. I'm in 7th grade, and if I were to go anywhere in the world, I would go back to Indonesia because that was fun.
It was fun.
Can I steal? Never mind.
Nope. Nope, it's too late. You're committed. Okay. All right, so today, I'll introduce myself too. My name is Luke Zedwick, and I'm the founder and head teacher and principal, superintendent, and head of the board and everything else I can make up. CEO of the Trinity School, because this is the Trinity School you're looking at it. Although, we've been talking to more and more parents lately, or I have, about joining us, which is kind of exciting. So we want to reinvent school from the ground up, and there's several ways that actually I wanted to put onto this video of what's different about this school. So one of them is not just stuff like this, because there's discussions in a lot of schools. I won't say all schools,
I
'cause
know.
there are plenty of schools with just lectures or book reading or videos or worksheets, but we also do 4 main classes rather than having a list that's pages and pages long of everything that everybody wants to be taught in school. We have a very short list, and it's writing about books, sciences, practical sciences in particular, mathematics, and Spanish language. So we want to focus on a few things so that we can get into deep ideas and see the world on a deeper level rather than knowing lots of little useless things about 1,000 subjects. Although, I mean, Jude's here, and he's a collector of such facts, as am I. So
They're not always correct. But
That's-
quite often they're made up
That's true.
without me even knowing.
So we do classes different. We do grades different. Like Max was saying, he's already forgotten what grade he's in. He doesn't even know how old he is anymore. Oh, okay. No, but we are detaching grades from age, and that's one of the big advantages research supports is that kids get to work at the pace that they're sometimes inspired, sometimes cajoled, and sometimes threatened to work at by yours truly to keep them on task. But what they don't get is to just move on because we have to keep going, or they don't have to sit and do nothing because waiting for other people to catch up. So especially in math, but in Spanish also, and in the sciences, we have a broad range of speeds at which kids can work, and books too. And so that's just a few of the things we do differently, but that brings me to what I want to ask you guys about. You guys who are going here, you know, Caitlin is our guest, but she and I were talking about books earlier, and we're trying to read some old books. You guys are reading A Tale of Two Cities.
Yeah.
When was
Well,
that written?
reading?
I would say early 1800s.
We could go
Okay.
check, but
Yes.
I'm reading
So
Sherlock Holmes. That's an old
within a few decades of the French Revolution, right? It's about that time in history. It's old. It's is it boring? I heard the word boring
it's
used.
not that bad.
It's
I
gets
thought it was
better?
boring to begin with.
exactly when you first start reading it, it's like this is the most boring thing. But towards the end of the book, it actually gets really good.
Once you kind of get to know all those boring people, they're not so bad.
Exactly.
Okay. Are old books more boring, or are new people more boring, and so old interesting things can't catch on to them anymore? What do you think?
I think it's part of the writing style and attention span. Because I find it really difficult to believe that anyone could ever sit down and read Moby Dick. Because I tried and there was no.
I mean, somebody did.
Right.
It was quite a famous book in its
But
day.
now, I mean,
I
I'm
probably
comparing
know
my attention span to
I probably
other
know
kids
10
my
people
age.
who have tried and failed, myself included.
Yeah.
That's true.
I know, like,
I got halfway and then.
a few sentences if you told me them.
You know the first few sentences of Moby Dick?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. That's how far you read, is what you're saying.
but no, just from random people things.
No, he's never read it.
Well, tell me about it. What is it? How does it start?
Bunch of boring talking about being depressed and
Will you put that between you so that it picks you both up?
that's
The first sentences were about boring people being depressed. Okay,
Nailed
we
it.
should get it out and figure out what it actually says.
He's never read
So,
Moby Dick.
what makes a good book, and why would we even want to read old books? That's my first question to you guys.
Why do we want what books?
Why would we want to read old books when there's like, we could be watching or reading the Divergent books and then watching a movie afterward?
Yeah.
Fiction
The
books
movies were really
specifically?
bad.
Rather than nonfiction? or-
Most of the books on our list are fiction.
Yeah.
Although, we've got quite a few that aren't. We've got some philosophy, some theology,
I mean,
some
there's a lot
history.
of older books you can learn a lot from.
How old is a book to be old? Like, how old does it have to be? 50?
Pre-20th century.
I mean, the book that Tommy started reading, I mean,
We
he
said
who,
his
shall, he who
name.
shall not be named, was reading in the beginning, was written 500 years, maybe not 500, several years before Jesus was born.
That's
Which book
kinda
is that?
It's the writings of Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, I thought he was reading
Oh,
Lord of the
that
Rings.
guy.
No, that
I
was
think-
written in the 50s.
I think that if your
Marcus
parents read the
Aurelius.
book, then it's old.
Parents, yeah, that's a lot of books though.
No,
Dad, you're
The
what?
problem is all of these
45?
books I've read, so
Well, like that and
Yeah.
before.
wait.
it's true.
How many of these books have you not read?
Quite a few I have not read. So I just finished World War Z. I
Can
haven't
you,
read Tale of Two Cities, although I read notes about it
We're ahead of
online
him.
Can you
That's right.
name a few others
that I've read.
that you haven't read?
Well, so a lot of the books that we're using are from like lists of friends have generated. So I have read Unbroken, but not the Baronet's Song. I've read To Kill a Mockingbird. I haven't read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Well, I've read some of them. I haven't read Ivanhoe or Gone with the Wind. I think I read Little Women, but it might have just been the movie. There's a bunch I haven't read.
Yeah, how many times have we seen that movie with Mom? Like,
Yeah, too many.
somewhere in the hundreds?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. Pride and
The
Prejudice.
entire
Pride and
Lego
Prejudice.
movie.
Okay, so what's different from a book like A Tale of Two Cities than the Lego movie? Why would it be worth our time? Like, why wouldn't we just watch the Lego movie and write essays about it? And that's a
The
serious
Lego
question.
movie's
Like, it's a fun movie.
Children's movie.
Some of these books are fun. Why does school just find the books you don't want to read? Is that
Well,
the
there's
goal
no-
of school?
Yeah, that's the goal.
I think their goal is to find a particular lesson. Well, this goal anyway.
I think that different books explain different cultures, and it also gives you like a life lesson about things too, like you're living through their life more than just entertainment.
The goal is you learn something rather than.
That's a problem.
Charlie.
Are you done doing that? This
Tommy
is
playing
Charlie.
video games, Charlie messing with.
Charlie might be fired after this. We'll find out. I know. Luckily, we have Max to step in.
Max is like,
All right. So, but why don't we just read fun books? Why don't we read Calvin and Hobbes?
didn't we just say? I mean, Calvin and Hobbes.
That would be good.
Well,
I-
to
I'm-
a certain-
I'm fine with
to a
this.
Good for
certain
that
point,
one.
They don't.
I'm fine with reading
Like, to a
Calvin and
certain-
Hobbes.
like,
We've got you learn about other cultures.
Up
What else
to
is there?
high school, in my idea, in my general understanding of the world, they don't start with old books.
Who doesn't start with old books?
Teachers.
I think he
What
What do
means
they
the-
start with?
They start with random things that they think you will like and have you write a paragraph about it.
So you're talking about like fourth grade,
Yeah.
Mrs. Roth trying to get you addicted to reading under the
It
table.
worked
Yeah. No, I know.
For you.
for some of us.
Well, I just had to
Jude,
watch
I think
Jude
it was
brag
just
about
for you.
reading so much, and then
Everyone else
So your
hates it.
competitive drive kicked in, and then you wanted
yes,
to read
I
more.
read books too much.
I shall be superior. Okay,
To me,
so
yeah, he wants to read more than I can.
so here's a question. Somebody was asking, are we going to have like Harry Potter series? If you combine all of the Harry Potter books that have sold, it might be one of the best-selling series of books among kids ever.
Yeah.
And by kids, I mean like from 10 years old to 25, right?
Or older.
So if something is that popular, it's speaking to some part of us that is important, I think. So, but I'm not putting it, I don't have any plans to put it on our book list. Maybe we should. What do you guys think?
I kind of want.
We
I think
should
the
put it
reason-
on the
part
book.
of the reason those books are so popular is because it's the whole book series is based on fantasy, and the interaction between the characters is really well done. Same with
Yeah.
like Lord of the Rings and
Is there a difference between Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the
I mean, I remember when the first Harry Potter books were coming out and then they started making the movies. I would hear a lot of adults who were my age then complaining about how bad Harry Potter was and how great Lord of the Rings was. As if it was
It's
like
a
They're
different
both.
series.
They're both.
it's a different
they're
reading
both-
level by far.
Charlie, what were you going to say?
They're both amazing. Like series is that the right word?
Yeah,
Yes.
they're both
Okay.
amazing. Yeah, and one of them's older. I feel like just
Yeah.
the fact that something's older gives it more credibility to some people.
Well, if people still enjoy reading something, that's, I mean, it's way old. It's a way older series.
So when you guys are
Still read
90
it.
years old, will like little kids still be reading Harry Potter?
Probably.
No.
Yeah.
No.
My kids will be
I'll
because
still be listening to it,
no,
and I'll
thanks
be
for
on the
Lord of the Rings.
1000th read of Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire. J.K. Rowling, I think she might be the richest
Writer, yeah.
writer ever. Maybe one of the richest women on earth.
Yeah,
Right now,
no,
she's
she
trying
might
to
be-
change everything.
She's
about
got
the books
more money.
afterwards.
She's got more money than Oprah. Actually, that might not be true. Don't quote me on that. Okay.
No, so it was funny. She was on this whole interview thing, and she was going back and came up with all this stuff as to why, like, making the books politically correct. Like, Hermione's black and she's in a wheelchair, and all this
And
stuff.
guess who's gay?
Sure.
Honestly.
Yeah, no.
Whoa, bitter. Bitter so much. Okay. I don't think that showed up on the camera, but
Hopefully not.
it's a little
It's
strange.
in his face.
I think I just saw Gollum a little bit.
My precious.
Okay. So,
okay.
what's interesting about J.K. Rowling, this is not really on the topic of books, but she has actually
She's an
come under a
author,
lot
so
of
yeah.
attack by the politically correct folks on the question of are people who are men who say they're women actually women?
The answer is no.
Yeah, well, that's her. That's what she said, and the reason she says that is that she wants women to be treated equally with men, which means they have to be distinct from men. So if a man can just say he's a woman, and so case in point, like women's sports, particularly college swimming at the moment, is getting taken over by men who say they're women,
Well, how many
and they win all the races.
was it? Swimming. There were 2 transgender male competitors who destroyed everybody else.
Yeah,
They were like a couple laps ahead of them or something.
right.
If I was in the position of any of like the women in that scenario, if I,
Which you're not.
which I'm not,
Ooh,
Again,
Charlie's exploring
you're not
his
wrong.
gender
No.
question too.
no,
See, we shouldn't even
No.
talk about this.
It's got
What are you
weird
gonna say,
eyes.
Charlie?
no.
If you,
I'm saying if I was in the position of one of the women where I was getting destroyed by someone that was transgender, if I won, if I got like, if I placed behind them but ahead of all the other actual women, I would celebrate as if I won.
right?
Because
Yeah, I could see that too. The trick with some of these sports, like if you think of high school, if you're the state champion, you get a lot of accolades and recognition, right? If you're third, but you consider yourself the state champion, it's not the same.
You're not going to get any scholarships.
Yeah,
for
well,
that.
what
But the
if
question
everybody
is
else
now,
agrees?
even these guys are getting scholarships as women too. But that's beside the point. The real point is that even someone like J.K. Rowling, who at times has tried to be flexible with how she understands the characters, I think is a nice way to say it, in order to make more people happy who think it matters if the character is in a wheelchair or not, right?
Right.
Even she can come under attack.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that actually brings up another point. Coming back to our topic of books, I read a headline today that there was a book that we read that's being removed from schools called To Kill a Mockingbird
Oh, why?
under claims that it's racist.
Oh,
Right?
wait.
So for those of you who don't know, like the story of To Kill a Mockingbird is about a little girl growing up in the South, and her dad is an attorney. She lives in a white family, and she's white too, but a local man who's black is accused of rape, and her dad defends him in court. And there's a scene portraying a potential lynching that was talked about happening, where people came to the jail where this man was being held, demanding his release. And the dad stopped essentially these guys from coming and breaking into the jail, and what probably would have been hanging him from a tree to kill him. But it deals with these accusations, and the most common, I don't know if it's the most, I think it's very common accusation that black men faced and still do sometimes today, which is the accusation that they were going to rape white women. And so there's a lot of tension. You guys might have seen a story in the news maybe a year ago where this woman was walking her dog in the park in New York, and this black guy was yelling at her for not having her dog on the leash or something like that. And she started recording him and then said, "I'm going to call the police and tell them that a black man is attacking a white woman." Like, it was a quote like that. And that quote carries with it a ton of weight if you are not just a black man in America, but a black man in a country where there's a history of men like you getting accused of raping women when they hadn't. And this whole sort of cultural reaction that's very common in the South in To Kill a Mockingbird, it still happens in some level today, where everyone runs to defend and believe a white woman who's accusing a black man. And for this woman, the way she said it, it sounded like she knew and was willing to use
aware of
that as a method to make him afraid of her.
Well, it was a threat.
It's but it's not just a threat. It's not just saying, "I'm going to tell the police you attacked me."
It's like,
right?
hey.
She's taking it to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So books like To Kill a Mockingbird are portraying that, but they're portraying it with people and characters that are real for that time. So someone who today might want to have a really high standard around how they handle issues of race, almost no one in 1950s Alabama, I don't remember where the book is set, but that might be right. Almost no one in that small southern community is going to hold themselves to the standards that we see now as being right. Does that make sense?
Right.
No matter how
'Cause
good
it's-
and wholesome those people are, it's a different way of looking at things.
It's their culture.
So you could write a
incredibly
story like
different.
To Kill a Mockingbird, and you could have your main character have modern sensibilities, but the story won't ring true anymore, right? But if you tell the story of someone who, in the way they were raised and the way they understood the world, still wanted to do something good, then it's going to be a complicated story, because that person might still be racist in some ways, or they might not be racist, but they might do things that get called racist now. So all of that complexity, we have to face it with real books. If we just take stories that make, well, here's the good guys and here's the bad guys, and the bad guys are always bad and the good guys are always good, that's not how life is. And so if those are only books to read and the only movies you watch are like Thanos is a really bad guy and all the heroes are really good, well, then you have a really simplistic view of the world that actually sets you up to be harmed, because two things could happen. Someone who's really bad or someone who's good in your life might do something terrible to you, and you won't have a frame of reference to understand how that could happen. And that's trauma. Trauma is when you thought you would be safe and then you suddenly weren't.
Well, there's
right?
all these because of that, there's all these naive people who don't understand that they can do bad things. So they'll see themselves do something like that, or they'll see someone that they know do that, and it really harms them because they don't understand.
And that's so what you're talking about too is like people traumatized by war, their trauma stems from the bad things they did. that we might look at it and say, well, it's war, that it happens, but you didn't pull the trigger and see someone die. And that changes you in ways that we can't understand if we haven't been in that circumstance. But part of that change is if you assume, well, I'm a good person, so I don't do bad things, because you have a
that's not how it
simplified
works.
view of that. So I think it's really important, and the reason that we have these difficult books, another book about the South is Gone with the Wind. It's actually about the South before and during and after the Civil War. So at that time, there are these really wealthy landowners who own slaves and who live in a culture and a life that's like the aristocracy. They're, like you might imagine in Europe long ago, or maybe not that long ago, where there's these rich families who control the land, right? The South was built on that same model, and slavery made that possible. And when the Civil War was happening, it was that way of life and that understanding of a society was dying. And so that book is about characters going through that. But those characters, even though they're the main character and you sympathize with them, they're going to have some problems, right? They're going to have some views of black people that are wrong and evil. They're going to have some views of themselves too that are wrong. So.
Yeah, because it turns out in real life, everything usually almost never is black and white. It's almost always some shade of gray.
Yeah.
And also the whole thing with like Call of Duty and games like that, where you're just killing and it has no consequence.
Tell me what you're thinking with that. How does that connect?
Like how all these people in the world are learning now that killing isn't that bad. You just reappear somewhere else. Wow, you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I've listened to some interviews with kids who went through school shootings, and a really common statement afterward is, I just felt like I was in a video game, right?
Yeah, that's
It doesn't feel real.
People that were there when it happened, or people that did it?
People that
Yeah.
were there.
Okay.
Yeah. That it feels like you're in a movie or something that's not real.
Yeah, where like you should be scared, but then instead you react in a way that's not healthy.
Well, most people in those circumstances, and I think we've talked about this before, they react with total frozen emotions, and then after the fact, their emotions don't turn off. It's like they didn't turn on in the moment, and now they can't get them to turn off, and that's what a lot of trauma does. And your brain, if you have the same emotional thought pattern, right? So you're thinking of something that happened, and so emotion is your body's reaction to something that happened and what you believe about it, right? So if you believe you're a good person and then you do a terrible thing, you're going to have an emotion because there's like wait, what is going on there? And so the same thing can happen if you believe you're safe and something shows you you're not safe, right? And now you're going to have an emotional reaction to that. If you believe that your brother is terrible and then he steals your stuff, well, now you're going to have an emotion there. Right? So what happens though is you get in cycles of emotions, right? So you don't just experience an emotion once like we normally do, and it fades away and you go back to your normal state of being. Sometimes something will happen that's so real that you keep feeling and thinking about it in this like cycle. Keeps you up at night, interrupts the things you want to do. And your brain is kind of like a wooden table, right? On this table, there's a bunch of scratches. And so if a kid was sitting at a table like this with a pencil, he couldn't write on this table, right? But if he were to keep scratching the same spot, eventually it would get through and create a groove on that wood. And that's how your brain is too. If you cycle through, especially when it's a heavily emotion-laden thought pattern, it like makes a groove in your mind. And so then what happens, once you have that groove, is your pencil going along goes near it and it just drops into it. And now you're in that groove and it just reinforces itself.
It's a rut in your brain.
It's like a rut in your brain. And so then once you're in that rut, it's hard to get out. And when you're out of it, it's easy to fall in. So what a lot of therapy is looking at it, almost like mapping out where that rut is, that pattern of thought, and saying,
How do we avoid that?
what's going on with that? And now you see it. Like I like to mountain bike, and if you're mountain biking down a steep trail, there's often ruts because people will ride it in the mud. And so if you look at the rut as you're going down the hill, you will just go into it. The only way to avoid it is to deliberately get away from it. And so patterns of thought are that way as well. So. But one of the best things I've ever heard someone say, and it's kind of a funny source, was from, on the topic of books, was Will Smith. He had won this like Kids' Choice Award or something, something that's not a big deal. Maybe his dream might be to get an Oscar. Maybe he's gotten an Oscar. I don't think he has. But he got a Kids' Choice Award, which is like an MTV or something. I don't know. He gets to give a speech, and so he gets up there and he says he wanted to encourage kids to do two things when they're having trouble or to make their life better. One was running, and the other one was reading. He said, in running, you're learning how to push yourself even though you're suffering, and it will build strength in ways that other exercises don't and other activities don't. Like learning to push yourself through suffering. That almost anyone who's succeeded at long distance running will be successful in their life. I thought, that's really interesting. Versus if you're really good at basketball, like running is a totally different thing.
Well, the idea is you can take it so that when you need to have that endurance in other parts of life, you have it.
Yeah, well, and a big reason that I've seen kids, right, because I've worked with kids of all ages in the last 20 whatever years, a big reason why they fail is they start quitting. They quit one thing and then they just start wanting to quit everything. So whenever things get hard, they quit. And running is literally training you not to quit when your body's like, why are you doing this to me? So that was one thing. And the other one was reading. And the way he said it was, he said, every problem you've ever had, a million people have had it before you, and hundreds of people have written books about what those millions of people have been through. And so there's a solution. People have been around struggling and suffering in basically the same few different ways for a long time. And so when you read a book, you can learn from other people. You don't have to learn things the hard way. And I thought that was really good. So part of what we're trying to do is select books that are interesting. They're about something that you find interesting, but also that they are about real struggles that you guys will have. That's the hard part, is if you're reading about someone who's struggling in the first few years of their marriage, right? And you guys are in middle and high school.
Yeah, we're not near there.
It's like, that's weird, right? But if you can read and learn it, then when that time does come, then you've got some tools, you know what to do.
You've got the skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll understand it a little bit more.
Yep. I remember, and the thing about a book versus a movie, a long movie might be 3 hours, but a decent sized book is going to take you, 8 hours, 10 hours to read? So you've got to focus your mind on those ideas for a long time.
You learn a lot more from a book than you do from a movie just because of that.
Yeah, and to read a book, you have to put your full focus on it to read the words and comprehend what it means and visualize it. Whereas a movie, it kind of already does that for you. So you don't, it's not always guaranteed that you're going to be...
It doesn't require effort.
100% effort, yeah.
Well, and I feel like I get way more immersed in the experiences of the characters in a book.
Yeah.
Because I've spent just so much time with them.
And you can go at your own pace too, whereas a movie might be like, wait, what happened there? But a book, you'll understand.
Well, in the book,
everything.
you're
So if you
building
watched the movie
whole
10
scenario
times,
in
it'd be
mind.
about the equal of hours to the book.
Yeah.
What about audiobooks? Are they okay? Are they just as good?
Audiobooks, it's like you have to go re-listen. It's kind of like rereading. You get a similar amount out of it. It's like halfway between a movie and an actual book.
Okay.
I've got another thing. What if you're reading along with an audiobook?
Then you're weird. Never
Well,
did.
that would be really immersive.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, anytime you're reading, I've heard someone say that you should read aloud, because now you are taking the words from the part of your brain that reads, sending it to the part of your brain that speaks, and then your ears are actually getting it back in. So you're like hitting all these different parts of your brain at once, just like reading it to yourself. But to actually read a whole book out loud would probably double
It's
or
kind of
triple
painful.
the amount of time. I do it sometimes if I'm reading a short, something that I really want to focus on.
Well, something that, like, it's a little bit complicated just to read, so you have to have that other...
Yeah, well. So the way I use that most often is in reading the Bible, because you might read a story in the Bible that takes less than 500 words to tell someone's whole life. So every little detail in that story, you need to get. So you don't need to read it fast. You need to read it slowly, is what I say, and then pause and say, okay, what were they experiencing? What was that like?
Yeah, it's kind of like some books or texts are more dense than others. Because, for example, 500 words for an entire story, every word, like you said, is going to be important. But if it's in a book about someone's entire life, then it's going to be more spread out and less dense.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the difference is between when you're reading a longer book, it's like you are getting to know that person. You know, when you make a friend, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And so a book's strength might be that they're trying to get you to get to know those characters so you feel emotionally connected with them.
Yeah.
So then when they do go through something or experience something or learn something, it's like you learned it too because you were right there. Versus it, like if you guys write an essay about your book, in theory, the main ideas of the book are in the essay. So
Right, but you don't
I could
get
just
the
read the
same-
essay and then I don't need to read the book.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the same.
But
don't
you
get
don't
the
get
same
those
connection.
emotional connections to all those people.
Yeah,
You just get like the facts and not
right.
any of the opinions or emotions.
Yeah.
Well, there's some books where it's you don't get any of that. It's just the whole book is just facts. It's like, oh, and they went and did this. It's not like
Depends on the writing.
Like
style.
history textbooks? Or
no,
you're
I'm talking about like some novels I've read. It's just bland, nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess
It's really
just
boring.
depends.
the quality of the writing.
Mhm.
Well, and then it can come down to what are the actual things that their writing is about. So the test of a writer would be to write an interesting book about a boring life, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes you could be a boring writer, but the things you write about are really exciting. And so it's kind of still fun to read.
Yeah, that's kind of like the book I was reading, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
where like their life isn't like extremely interesting, but the way it's written, it's like you like can't put it down.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Mhm.
All right, so I'm gonna tell you what I've been working on, and I don't have the answers for, but that I'm playing with the idea of what motivates people. What are the things that we fundamentally need? So like we all need some sense of purpose, that we make a difference. We all need love and belonging with people that matter to us, right? There you could probably make a list that's not too long of the things you need, and then probably the list of things that motivate you might be really close to that.
Mhm.
And then I was looking at a connection between those two things and a list of all the like fundamental emotions. And there's a bunch of different sets of those where people have a sort of theory about how to classify and group different feelings. But wondering if that's all connected, and that if you understood that well and you trained yourself to stop and say, okay, what am I actually feeling? That you could learn how to motivate yourself to get stuff done in ways that don't waste as much of your time. Or does Tommy need to be fired too? Just turn your volume down, bro. Okay. All right, so maybe that's next time, something for you guys to think about. Jude, are you making cat noises, or is the cat making
No,
cat
it was
noises?
the cat.
Okay.
No,
She's
it's-
allowed to do that. She's not fired.
Yeah, yeah. Can I put the
She's
cat into
fired
the
as a
cat
cat.
noises?
Mhm.
All right.
Wait, what?
Looks like we're losing our discussion, so
Also-
let's wrap it up. It's 2:00.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so I'm going to do my outro. This is Run and Find Out, a podcast afternoon discussion of the Trinity School. My name is Luke Zedwick, and our catchphrase is catchphrase.